Hey guys, and welcome to another Monkey Pixels video. Today we're talking about all the media and storage options for the Blackmagic Pocket 4K as well as 6K, and I'll give you my take on which I prefer and why.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
As we all know, there's multiple options to record your footage to your Blackmagic Pocket 6K and 4K. There's SD cards, there's CFast cards, and there's external SSD options. And in this video, I want to talk about which one I think is the best, where are the recording limits on either, and where's the advantage and disadvantage of either solution. So let's start from the bottom, and that is the SD card solution. Usually we all have some SD cards lying around, but which one actually works for what on your Blackmagic Pocket 4K and 6K? And I recently made a video explaining everything about SD cards that there is to know about the numbers and what everything means. So if you're not sure about that, I recommend watching this one first and then coming back to the SD card section, so you're a lot wiser and you know which SD card is right for you. But without watching this video, let's sum it up real quick. V30 cards are too slow and I wouldn't recommend them for anything. V60 cards can work if you're only doing a really high compression like B-RAW in 12:1, or if you're shooting ProRes LT or ProRes proxies, but even with ProRes it's probably getting to a limit if you're recording a lot and in higher frame rates as well. So V60 cards might be an option if you're only shooting B-RAW in 12:1, but I probably wouldn't suggest them either. So going over to the best solution when it comes to SD cards, and that is V90 cards. And V90 cards are really fast and they work for almost everything on the Pocket 4K and 6K. And since I only have the Pocket 6K, I will be referring to this because the file sizes are even bigger and everything that works on the Pocket 6K will equally work on the Pocket 4K. In my test with the 256GB V90 cards, I could record everything up to ProRes 422 up to 50 frames. With ProRes HQ, I could record everything in 25 frames and even 30 frames, but when going higher than that, the card actually stopped after a while because it wasn't fast enough. And the same goes for B-RAW in a compression up to 3:1, but only in 24 or 25 frames. If you want to go higher than that and shoot 50 or 60 frames, then the card isn't fast enough. And even with B-RAW in 3:1, or if you're recording in Q0, you actually might run into problems. So everything with 5:1 compression or lower is totally fine with SD cards, and you can record everything to those SD cards. A 256GB V90 card from Angelbird runs you about $400. So that's obviously a proud price for an SD card, but where are the cons and where are the pros? The biggest pro of the SD card is the compatibility. We are also shooting photos on our EOS R or using it in different other cameras. So with an SD card, you are not limited to only shooting on your Blackmagic Pocket cinema camera, but you have a really fast SD card that you can use for raw burst photos on your photo camera or any other video camera that supports SD cards. Another big pro is that you can record internally, and I will always recommend recording internally for various reasons that I will get into later in the video. Looking at $400 for 256GB is obviously not cheap, but if you only need one card for several cameras, because on the one day you're shooting photo and on the other day you're just shooting video, you only need one card and not several, this might actually run you cheaper than having several different cards for several different cameras. Going up to my favorite solution, and that is CFast 2.0. And I'm using a 1TB CFast 2.0 by Angelbird. And I really like this because you have 1TB that is plenty enough for everything that I do, and you can almost record everything to CFast 2.0. And I'm saying almost because there is some limitations. If you're shooting in the highest quality modes on the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, like shooting in B-RAW 3:1 compression at a high frame rate of 50, you run into problems after about 8 to 9 to 10 minutes because then the card stops recording because it isn't fast enough. And the same goes for recording ProRes HQ at a higher frame rate of 50 or 60 because the card isn't fast enough for that either, so recording will stop after around 8 minutes. There is, however, a faster solution to CFast 2.0 cards, and Angelbird offers a card that is an XT card, and this one is fast enough for recording everything internally on the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. A 256GB CFast 2.0 card by Angelbird cost you around $280. That is obviously a lot less than the equivalent of an SD card per gigabyte. The 1TB version that I'm currently using is $900 on B&H, and I would recommend this if you shoot a lot of high quality content and you shoot a lot of content as well. But depending on your settings and your shooting style, the 512GB version might actually be the best bang for the buck for you. So what are the pros and cons of using CFast 2.0 cards? The pros are that you can record almost everything internally, and if you're using an XT card, you can actually record all the shooting modes within your camera. Another pro is that it's actually a decent price per gigabyte. It's obviously not the cheapest option, and we're getting to the cheapest option in a moment, but I think the price is actually right when recording to CFast 2.0 cards. And one of the biggest pros is obviously that you can record internally, and the card is fast enough, so if you have a fast CFast 2.0 reader, you can actually transfer your footage quite quickly to your computer. So now let's talk about the cons, and one of the biggest cons is probably the limited compatibility. Yes, there's a lot of video cameras out there that currently use CFast 2.0 cards, but the future is actually CF Express cards. So most of the manufacturers are moving away from CFast cards right now, and also a lot of photo cameras don't utilize CFast cards, and they're using SD cards or the newer ones using CF Express cards as well. And you might have wondered by now, why am I only recommending Angelbird cards? And I'm not sponsored by Angelbird or being paid by Angelbird, but whenever I recommend them, there's a true story that I like to tell real quick. So back when I bought my Canon C200, I bought them along with a couple of Angelbird CFast cards, and everything worked fine for about a year. And then after making an firmware update of the Canon C200, the cards actually didn't work anymore, and I was on a shoot and I didn't know why. So I posted this issue in a Canon C200 Facebook group, and within a couple of hours a sales rep of Angelbird actually contacted me and explained the issue to me. The issue was that these cards were really old. They weren't even 256GB cards, but 240GB cards, and with the newest update from Canon didn't support them anymore. So it wasn't Angelbird's fault, but basically Canon's fault. And they just sent me a complete set of new 256GB CFast cards free of charge. And not a lot of companies have this kind of service. And I've been using Angelbird ever since, and I never had any problems. And my trust in this brand is actually really high, and it's also recommended by companies like Red, and they have match packs for Blackmagic, so I highly recommend using Angelbird for all of your storage needs. So let's get to our last solution, and that is using an external SSD via our USB-C port. The crowd's favorite and the SSD that is used by most cinematographers when using the Blackmagic is the Samsung T5. I've been using our Samsung 2TB T5 drive in the beginning when using the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. And you have the same limitations that you have when using a regular CFast card, that you can record almost everything to your SSD except for the highest quality and the highest frame rate, because then the SSD isn't fast enough. When you want to record everything in the highest quality and the highest frame rates, the most recommended SSD drives are those from SanDisk. I haven't used one of those personally, but doing my research, this was the one that everybody recommended. A little disclaimer, when you're using a Samsung T5 drive, I wouldn't go for the 512GB version, but start at the 1TB version, because the higher capacity drives are actually faster, and the 512GB might actually not be able to record all those recording options because it's not fast enough. Another thing when talking about Samsung SSD drives is that they have a newer version, the T7, and I would stay away from those because they're not really compatible and don't really work well. Another quick tip is using the right cable when recording to an external SSD. In the beginning, when using my Samsung T5 drive, I ran into some problems where the recording suddenly stopped, and I tried all kinds of different cables, from Thunderbolt cables, really expensive cables, and still they didn't really work. And I will recommend one cable, and I will link this in the description below, and this is really short and really fast, so I highly recommend getting this cable. So, what are the pros and cons of using an external SSD solution? The biggest pro is obviously the price. A 1TB SanDisk actually runs you only about $170, though that is way cheaper than all the internal options you can actually go for. Unfortunately, the Samsung T5 is discontinued and it's really hard to get right now, so that is somewhat of a con because a lot of the cages and SSD mounts are only supporting the Samsung T5 drive, so I guess this is a con. Another pro of using an external SSD is that you can hook it up to your computer directly and you can basically record to the SSD and then edit right off it. So if you need some fast turnarounds, this is a great option without having to go through transferring your footage to an external SSD or your computer. And obviously there's also cons. So what are the cons of using an external SSD? And I haven't had this happen to me personally because I didn't really use an external SSD too much, but I read in a lot of forums and Facebook groups online that people actually ended up with corrupt files, or they couldn't read the files, or just lost footage. So the reliability of using an external SSD is probably not the best. The next con I'm listing goes kind of hand in hand with the one before, because now you have an additional point of failure. You have a cable that is dangling off your camera as well as an SSD that is mounted somewhere. So there's a lot of points of failure where you could just yank out the cable by accident or knock off the SSD even though it's mounted. So obviously there is points of failure that could actually lead to some lost footage. And the last con is that it makes your camera bulkier and you have less mounting options for other stuff like microphones or batteries when using an external SSD drive. So at the end of the day, what is my recommendation? And I think you already guessed it. If you can afford it, get yourself a CFast 2.0 card because it's faster and it's also cheaper than the SD card solution, but it's way more secure and less bulky than an external SSD solution. So whenever we're shooting on our Pocket 6K, we're shooting two Angelbird CFast 2.0 cards, and that is due to us shooting a lot of handheld and fast-paced action moves, and I don't want to deal with the risk of having lost footage or the cable getting loose or any kind of stuff like this. So this is why I recommend shooting internally for the highest reliability and the biggest ease of use. So there you have it. These are all the storage solutions that you have when shooting on Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras and my recommendation, which one I think is the best. I hope you liked this video, and if you actually did, then actually like the video and subscribe for more, and also check out our other videos that I did on the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, like our handheld rig video, and I hope to see you on the next one.